I've spent the last 2 years combining running and lifting, and I'm now pretty good. I've managed to increase my VO2 max, run further and faster, build muscle and get stronger in the process. But after signing up for the UK's toughest cycling challenge on a whim, I'm doing a hard pivot, at least in the short term, and wanted to know whether or not all this hybrid training I've been doing will come in any use. So I did what any person in my position would do. I drove 200 miles down south to borrow my brother's bike, I signed up for a 2-week free trial of Zwift, and I set aside 50 minutes with a pair of fresh legs to test my FTP.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And surely all those hours I spend squatting and running in zone 2 means I'll be able to squeeze out a decent wattage over this challenge and prove that I've got what it takes to finish this race, right? Oh God, what have I done? So regular viewers on this channel might know that next month I'll be attempting the Fred Whitton Challenge, which is notoriously the hardest cycling sportif in the country, and I'm woefully underprepared. But in the interest of complete transparency, I thought it might be worth summarising my entire cycling experience to date. It won't take long. So first off, every couple of years since I was a teenager, I've spent a day or two each summer mountain biking, mostly downhill stuff, with varying levels of success.
I'm okay.
Secondly, I accompanied my wife's granddad on the last 3 days of his record-breaking cycle from Land's End to John O'Groats, and managed to keep up. He was 90 years old at the time for reference. And finally, back in December I entered my first ever duathlon, again with no preparation, which culminated in me experiencing the worst episode of cramp in my life to date.
Looks a bit dodgy, doesn't it?
And outside of that, there's really not much to talk about. I don't even own my own bike. So in a month's time, when I attempt to cycle 112 miles and climb over 10,000 feet all in a single day, I'm hoping that some of this running and strength training I've been doing carries over, even just a little bit. So before I get into any testing, where am I at currently with my strength and fitness? On the running side of things, I'm certainly not elite, but a competent intermediate knocking on the door of advanced. I recently ran a 10k PB in a time of just over 38 minutes, which according to fetcheveryone.com, puts me in around the top 11% of males around my age who've actually run a 10k. And looking at the slightly dubious estimation from Apple Health about my VO2 max, it states that it's currently somewhere around 61.5, which apparently puts me in the top 2% of men my age, but this time presumably also including people that don't regularly train. And on the strength side of things, this weekend I'm competing in a powerlifting competition, where a conservative estimate of how much I might be able to lift across the squat, bench press and deadlift is a number around 540 kilograms. And plugging these numbers into legionathletics.com, this would put me somewhere between advanced and elite, which is a fairly subjective differentiation. But looking at a data set of people who have actually competed in a powerlifting competition, a fairly niche demographic, I'd probably be somewhere in the top 20%. Obviously some of these figures that I'm quoting are just estimates, and some of the data sets that I'm comparing myself to aren't exactly representative of my entire demographic, rather just a small slice of people who actually compete. But what I think these numbers do show is that I am definitively an above average runner and lifter. And I know what you're thinking, nobody gets a medal for that. But I would hope that that would be the case for someone with my exercise history and 2 hard years of consistent hybrid training. So although cycling and running are clearly 2 very different sports, there are some commonalities between the 2 of them. And I'm hoping that some of these traits I've been training over the last few years might carry over into my performance both in next month's race and with today's FTP testing, and might even help me achieve a higher than average FTP, at least in the cohort of people that don't own their own bike. So enough of the talking, let's find out how I get on. So I'm outside and here's my setup. Got my brother's bike, got my brother's Wahoo kicker, got my brother's Lycra. What are brothers for if not for a few hand-me-downs? And I'm almost ready to get into this ramp challenge. So first off, I thought I'd define what success would actually look like today. So to be clear, my loose aim is to try and be above average. And looking at trainerroad.com, it reckons a cyclist sitting on the 50th percentile of performance would be producing about 2.86 watts per kilo. So for me, at 85 kilos, that's around 243 watts. I do, however, have a feeling that this might be mixing male and female data, because looking at cyclinganalytics.com, it reckons that the 50th percentile for men is more like 3.4 watts per kilo. So for me, that would represent a far more intimidating FTP of 289 watts. I've only been on Zwift once in my life so far. It was a lot of fun, but as soon as it got over 200 watts, things got uncomfortable quite quickly. But I guess that's going to have to be my target for today. So let's see what I've got. So started off nice and easy at 100 watts, and every minute from here we go up by 20 watts until I can't go anymore. It's interesting, when I get up to like 300 watts, how it feels. I literally have no gauge as to how each power output should be feeling. I'm a complete novice. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on my heart rate there. It's currently at 150 beats per minute, which is quite high, but I do have a maximum heart rate of somewhere around 190. So we've got some growing room. You know, it's a warm day. We're still early on in the test. I'm just gonna take this top off because this is gonna get hot and sweaty soon. So I think from here on out, guys, probably won't be doing a whole lot of talking because this is going to get hard quickly. Just going to try and focus on my cadence, trying to hit around 80, 85 to 95, and focus on my breathing. On that heart rate. Feels tough, but heart rate's telling me that I've got more to go. This is tough. Oh, Jesus Christ. No, that's me. Taste just drops. Oh my God. Right, 1 second to cool down and then we'll dig into it. Oh, Jesus. Yeah? Oh, nasty. Yeah. So, a few immediate thoughts. All the gear, no idea, springs to mind. And perhaps a more succinct way to put it would be humbling. So when you look at the data, well, it's nothing to write home about really. My estimated FTP was 257 watts, which equates to just a smidge over 3 watts per kilogram. Which in actual fact, when you look at the group of adult males who regularly cycle, that puts me below average, which when you think about it, isn't all that surprising. And with the benefit of hindsight, I think all the strength training that I do will probably help my sprinting power on the bike, so how much power I can exert on the pedals over a handful of seconds. And I'm sure that all the running that I do would mean that at those lower intensities, I'll be able to just keep going relative to someone that doesn't run at all. But what this pretty underwhelming FTP result probably proves, in a classic unscientific YouTube study where n equals 1, is at the end of the day, there is no substitute for getting on a bike and putting in some hard work, which as of yet, I haven't done. But you know what? I'm not too disheartened because it's been a while since I've been in this bracket in any of the sports that I've trained, and what I do know from experience is that there's a whole load of newbie gains ahead of me, and it's not unrealistic to think that I could be making solid progress week on week. Whereas when you're a lot more advanced, it takes several months of consistent work to see any progress. And finally, what does this mean for the Fred Whitten Challenge? Well, I'm still obviously going to give it my absolute best. The goal is not to be competitive, it is literally just to cross that finish line in one piece. And I'm not sure that I've mentioned it before on this channel, but I'm planning on cycling it with my dad. He tried to do this event 2 years ago, but in a nasty turn of events, broke his hip in a crash during a training ride. So he's at the end of a long road to recovery, and barring an absolute catastrophe myself, there is nothing that will stop me crossing that finish line with him. But of course, you guys let me know what you think in the comments. One thing's for certain, it'll make a hell of an entertaining YouTube video, so subscribe down below so you don't miss it. And I'll see you again next time.